historically, of the traditional hysterical female. She's a terrible role model for young women who want to break with these sort of stereotypical views of women from the past, like Nancy Pelosi, because Pelosi's just losing it. Now, but I always want to take a shot at Nancy Pelosi. But what I really want to address is Trump's. Trump seems to be running for president in 2024. I think that's a given. But the value of Trump, and certainly the man had his flaws, but the value of Trump is that he punctured these fantasies.
Absolutely.
That the far left. Well, there's no such thing as a far left anymore, is there? He punctured these fantasies that the left insists that we believe in. If we don't believe in it, it doesn't matter because they're going to pass a law to demand that we believe it and demand that we respect it. And he can't just lately he has promised in a campaign stop to ban transgender women from women's sports if he's reelected. I don't see what the problem is. I mean, he has pointed directly at this Leah Thomas, who was a man a short time ago and a championship swimmer in his own right, who now believes apparently that he's a woman. But I think he's laughing at the whole world, to be honest with you. He's breaking records, setting records, beating every woman in the pool. I mean, these are young women who practiced their whole lives for a shot at a championship. And along comes a man who says he's a woman and blows him out of the water. It's disgraceful.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I agree. I don't know that the president has the authority to do that. I'm not sure that there's anybody or any rule-making body that can do that. I think what has to be done is there has to be courage on the part of these different league administrators to stand up and say, man is a man, a woman is a woman, and never the twain shall meet in athletics. And I think that's the way it's going to have to be done. And the only way to do that is to get these college presidents unwoke and get them back on the same page as I would say 75% of Americans are, that we understand what gender is. And just because gender is not a fluid issue, it is scientific and medically provable. I mean, it is, you are born with the genitalia of a man or a woman. That's the end of that conversation. And the notion that gender is some kind of a fluid issue is, if you're going to say you're a woman, then take the hormones and have the operation. If once you do that, then I think that if you want to do that, I would say that's fine. But if you're a man and you want to jump in the pool with women, I think what you're doing is to be cynical about all of this. Is that one, you are laughing at the world. Two, I think you're indulging a fantasy. And three, you get to shower with the girls. So, if that's what you want to do, then I guess that's okay. But no matter what you do, until you have that operation, you're not what you purport to be. And I'm sorry. That's the way I think most people see gender. You can't identify until you make that step, until you show the courage to make that step. Then I don't think you get the opportunity to participate in athletics that way. You can think that, but you don't get to jump in the pool with the girls.
No, you don't. Or go to the locker room with them, or go to the women's bathroom. but several state legislators, driven by fear and cowardice, have actually allowed young men to use women's bathrooms. There was a transgender young man in the Cedar Rapids area who lured a 14-year-old girl into a restroom and raped her. This is a guy wearing a dress, saying he's a woman, but somehow he raped her like a man, or a young man in this case.
Well, the case that we had there in Prince William County, I think it was, and outside of Washington, a young man not only did it once, he did it twice.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to.
Raped two different girls, and the school board essentially looked the other way. And I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you do it. So,
I'll tell you, you do it if you're an evil person. And I believe as
godless and evil.
And evil.
Yes.
That's we should stop pulling our punches with these sickening people. I didn't do it with the Catholic Church when they covered up child molestation in the church. I said then there is an evil in the church, and if it's still going on, there's still evil in the church, and the church cannot abide evil like that.
Right.
We cannot abide evil. We cannot stand around saying, "Oh, well, if you think you're a girl, or if you're a girl and you think you're a guy, that's perfectly all right." So they're nonsense.
Well, I you and I talk often when we get on these jags where we're going on this, that the one thing that we talk around and we really should talk to is the notion of what I just mentioned is the fact that many of these people are godless. They don't believe in God. They don't believe in the biblical truth, because if they did, there would be no question in their mind where they would stand on these issues. So they must be godless in their lives, and I think then we have to pray for them, because if they are that far gone, then they deserve our prayers to help bring them back. And unfortunately, I don't think a lot of them want to come back, because I think the notion of God and an absolute truth and a moral imperative escapes all of them, and no one wants to be held to that standard.
Sam, our guest is Sam Clovis, and this is AM 1400 KBFD, the Voice of Fort Dodge. Not long ago, a man who I worked with for a few years back in the 80s here at the radio station in Fort Dodge, he's down in Des Moines now, and he's a decent human being, but he decided he was a woman. He's about 60 by now. And I texted him and I said, would you come up here and talk on the radio with me concerning your transformation? And I promised to be respectful, and I was. He's a nice guy. His wife died recently in the last year or so, and he's had a terrible shock. And I don't want to get him on the air and beat him up, Sam. That's not who I am.
No, that's not what it's about.
But I did ask him, I said, well, now that you're a woman, because he was sitting in here, guy's 6 feet tall, or a little bit more. He wore some high top cowboy boots and with a stacked heel, so he was actually 6'4".
Right.
And he was dressed in a mini dress and had a blonde wig on. And I asked him, well, now that you're a woman, do you intend to date men? And he reacted. He was shocked that I would ask such a question. He said, no, absolutely not. I'm not gay. And well, I'm not asking you if you're gay. If you're genuinely a woman, aren't you attracted to men? And he said he had to think more about that. I don't think my old friend is truly a transgender. I think he's just confused.
Well, do you think this is a mental health issue?
I really do. He was married to a lovely girl for many, many years, and they had a really good marriage. I mean, you never saw one without the other. They traveled, they went places, they had the same interests, and she died early in her late 50s, which was a tragedy. And some months after that, now he's a transgender woman. I don't know, but as far as I'm concerned, anybody who thinks, I don't believe in gender dysphoria. Now, people who do believe in that will waive the American Psychiatric Association's opinion that there is such a thing as transgender identity. As a matter of fact, they even say there's 46 different identities. And I don't believe in sociology as a science either, Sam. I'm intrigued by sociology. I read a lot of what what was his name? Yes, I'm very familiar with C. Lewis. You know who I'm talking about? He was
C.S. Lewis.
No, C.S. Lewis was the religious author. Oh God,
right.
I can see him right in front of me, but I can't think of it now. It's been a long time since I've been in school, Sam.
Yeah.
But I'm not a big believer. You cannot, a psychiatrist cannot come to me and say, here is the genetic composition of a transgender woman. If they can't do that, if they can't prove to me that down deep in a person's bones, they're not either female or male, then I'm going to have to say, this is a bunch of hocus pocus. This is that the psychiatrists are telling us because it's politically expedient, because they think it makes them look good down at the country club or whatever. It's a lie.
Well, I think that one of the motives of the left is to create as much confusion in our society as possible.
And rob us of our identity, right?
Yes, and gender identity is one of those issues. And you can do it with race, you can do it with ethnicity, you can do it with any number of other factors. You can be too tall, or you can be too short. You can be too fat, or you can be too skinny. You can be any of those primary characteristics that then deal with the psyche. And the fact that we have schools in Iowa, in Nebraska, in other places that are attempting to teach gender fluidity beginning in kindergarten and first grade. And you sit and ask yourself, what is the purpose of that? I mean, for God's sake, let a boy be a boy, let a girl be a girl, and let them grow and mature into that. I'll guarantee you that a 13-year-old boy doesn't have any trouble figuring out which is which. I'll guarantee that. You wait and get a ninth grader and ask any ninth grader, male or female, what they're thinking, and I'll guarantee you 90% of the time it's about the opposite sex. I'll guarantee it.
Oh, at 13, you bet, buddy.
Because that's nature. Yeah. That is the nature of the species, and it is as natural as the day is long. And to create confusion in that is simply another ploy to gain control, and that is the further atomization of our society. And that is unfortunately what the left is about, is creating that confusion.
Well, in passing laws that force us to accept things that are lies, they did that with gay marriage, as far as I'm concerned. I haven't seen a scintilla of evidence that gay behavior is genetic. It's not there. Believe me, I've looked for it. But I do know that the late Chief Justice of the Iowa Supreme Court, Mark Cady, for example, spent a long time with material from Georgetown talking about implicit bias. And if you look at the rulings around gender and some of the rulings that came out of the Iowa State or the Iowa Supreme Court, especially the one on birth certificates, now on birth certificates you can have same-sex couples. And which is, of course, impossible. You cannot have two women involved in giving birth. You cannot have it. But in Iowa, we certainly can't tell the truth on a birth certificate. We must lie to make everybody feel better. But if you look at some of the writings of the Supreme Court justices of our recent Supreme Court, they reek with accusations of implicit bias. Sometimes they say it outright, and sometimes they don't. But that's their idea, that anyone who objects or calls say gay behavior abnormal behavior is obviously guilty of implicit bias, and the onus is on the person who believes that gay behavior is not normal, or it's abnormal. It's an abnormality. Abnormal means the dictionary definition of abnormality is a behavior that is practiced by a distinct minority. That's the definition of abnormal. But we can't say it because it's the truth, and we must tell lies to make everybody feel better. It's diabolical. It's Stalinist.
Well, but what again is if you look at the how can you come in with any issue on any level? And I think that my concern is the abuse of the 14th Amendment and the Equal Protection Clause and the Due Process Clause, because equal protection has been applied to everything. And the intent of that amendment was never to be abused the way it has been in applying equal protection to minorities that are such a small sliver of society. And yet we are bound to give equal protection based on something that we can't see, that we don't know, that you can trip into this without knowing that you're in this. So what happens is we have to change our language. We have to change how we approach things, because now you're given a list of pronouns that you can call people. And I'm telling you, in the Sioux City School District, they have individuals, these are kids, who have identified as being a gender other than the one they were born with. and by name, the teachers are given the pronouns that can be used when addressing that individual.
Well, that's just as much the parents' fault as anyone else's.
Well, it's ridiculous.
It's ludicrous, and they are damaging their children as they engage in this craziness.
Think how much that we have to deal with disruptive students in the student body as it is. And then the fact that now you are asking teachers to go in and have to go through almost every single kid to deal with a particular issue. And so now, what about the kids who have comfort animals, who have or they identify as a cat or a dog, and so now they have to have litter boxes in school. I'm not making this stuff up.
No, that's going on in Iowa City right now. And
I am not making this
anybody $100 that these kids are just jacking their teachers around. We're going to see just how big a hoop we can get these teachers to jump through. And if it's a high hoop, we'll have a bunch of high hoops for you to jump through. And by golly, the educational establishment, in its weakness and cowardice, is jumping right through them and saying, oh, yes, you're a cat. We'll get out cat food in a litter box. It's just, is anybody would have any courage?
You got to be kidding me.
Oh, no, that's happening in Iowa City right now.
Oh, I know. And so you talk about where are the parents? Where are those parents? Good Lord.
Sam Clovis is our guest. This program being brought to you by Blue Ribbon Pelham Waters at 612 South 32nd Street here in Fort Dodge. You may contact Blue Ribbon Pelham Waters by calling 576-6481 or online at www.ftwater.com. Sam, Joe Biden has warned the Taliban to give up an American who they've held captain for 2 years. I understand the entire Middle East is laughing their head off at the idea of Joe Biden threatening anybody.
Well, I'm shocked. Well, I'm glad he invented that, and I just heard the commercial there, and I think if you're able to invent something that, now here's the thing, I'm a little leery of anything that was suck stuff out of my head because I don't think I have very much left up there.
I heard that.
And I would hate to think that all of it would end up in a basin of saline water somewhere, so that would scare me a little.
You still putting out your newsletter or not?
Yes, I am. I just have been occupied with I've got a client down in Nebraska that's running for governor, and I'm teaching online for Liberty University, and plus I have other obligations, and so I get a lot of my time gets eaten up, and the newsletter kind of slides back to the back of the burner there.
Well, that happens sometimes.
Yeah, it does.
Sam Clovis is a well-known conservative in our area, a conservative with a great sense of humor, that's for sure. And as conservatives, we got to have a real sense of humor, especially all that nonsense we talked about in the last segment about guys thinking they're girls and just insanity. Now we turn to Joe Biden, who's once again shown us what a tough guy he is.
Right.
A poor guy by the name of Mark Freerichs, who is a Navy veteran and civil engineer, was kidnapped in Kabul, Afghanistan, and he's been held there now for 2 years for no apparent reason. Well, Joe Biden has said that threatening the safety of Americans or any innocent civilians is always unacceptable, and hostage taking is an act of particular cruelty and cowardice. The Taliban must immediately release Mark before it can expect any consideration of its aspirations for legitimacy.
Well, what about the thousands of Americans and American supporters that got left behind in Kabul?
Yeah.
And what about the 120,000 unvetted Afghans that came to the United States that are now populating various forts in the surrounding areas? I wonder where Joe was on that issue. I would say that this is a reaction to the family, and God bless them. I think that any family that has had to go through this, I just can't even fathom how hard that would be. And so I'm sure there is a humanitarian aspect to this, but I do think that we have, and I wanted to disagree with you on something that you said about Joe Biden, and you think he may be a nice guy. I don't think he is. I think he is a very, very difficult person. I think he has a lot of anger issues, and his reputation is that he is a mean-spirited, willful individual.
Oh, that fits every liberal. That fits almost every liberal.
Dementia has made that worse. Yeah.
I mean, mean-spirited. Have you been watching Rachel Maddow? Boy, is she an angry little man. I mean, she's been, the MSNBC network oozes rage. I mean, they're just terrible. I can't even watch them for more than just a few minutes. I mean, I just tune in to see what they're saying, and what they're saying isn't so offensive, but how they're saying it is just ugly.
Well, I think that there again, I think it's about ratings, and I think that they're trying to hold on to what they have, because now Rachel Maddow's show is fairly highly rated.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I think that you're a one-trick pony if that's your approach, and I think that if you take a look at others that they have on that network, they're laughable, because I don't think that how do you listen to them or watch them and consider them seriously as journalists? They're not journalists. They're something, but I don't know what it is, and it's not journalists.
Talk show.
And I think, that my experience when I was, in the green room and at Fox or CNN or even MSNBC, even NBC, There were some that I found that were off camera were really decent people. There are others that I refused to go on their shows because I thought they were absolute, total moron, idiotic, stupid, blind, and beyond reprieving. And so I just refused to go on their shows. And I started with Don Lemon. I got to the point where I couldn't tolerate it. I just said, no one could be that stupid. No one. And then I found, of course, there were many that are that stupid. So I just got to the point where I wouldn't go on a show. I wouldn't. And
well, I know
there were others that were every bit as contemptible as he is.
Certainly, yeah. Well, that's really that description of some of these guys as morons. That's kind of what our own Senator Kreinbrink thinks I am, but I don't let it bother me. I don't let it bother me. Anyway, somebody is just going to always think that you're a moron just because they like to think that way.
Oh, yeah, no kidding. And
they just like to think that way. It makes them feel superior.
Yeah, I think, they yell at me all the time about the fact that says, how can anybody have that much education and be that dumb? And so
by the way, Rachel Maddow is leaving MSNBC. She's leaving MSNBC. She wants to go somewhere where she can be herself, apparently. I don't know where that would be, but...
Well, where the hell would that be?
Podcasting!
God. I mean, we haven't seen the real Rachel Maddow. Oh, my God.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, this is AM 1400 KBFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. I wonder, not only is the Taliban laughing at Joe Biden and his threats concerning this poor guy that they've got locked up for no particular reason. He's just a civil engineer. He's not an intelligence asset or something. But we have Vladimir Putin, obviously frightened of Joe Biden, almost as frightened as he was of Barack Obama, who he openly despised and held in utter contempt, didn't even think he was a man. And, Putin's out of the old tough guy stock. They just don't think much of effeminate men, and Putin's a black belt. He has a lot of what used to be called manly activities. That's who he is. And of course, he was an intelligence asset for the KGB for a long time. So he's not too impressed with somebody like Joe Biden, when they make a threat. Oh, we got to stay out of the Ukraine. I mean, Ukraine right now is surrounded by Russian troops right at the border or within striking distance of the Ukrainian capital. That's how fearful that Vladimir Putin is of Joe Biden.
Well, and I think that I looked today, and I've been reading the news coverage in the newspapers about the Russia thing and Ukraine, and I'm sitting there thinking I think it's better than 50-50 that Russia will move into Ukraine. I think it's better than 50-50, and I think it's probably 10-1 that we'll do anything about it. What I'm saying is maybe 100-1 that we'll do anything about it. I just don't see NATO doing anything other than stamping their feet and going to the United Nations and sit down with the Security Council, of which Russia has a veto vote. I mean, so you can put all the resolutions you want up, and Russia has the opportunity to veto those.
Certainly,
because they're a permanent member. So yeah, I mean, so what are you going to do? I just don't think that anybody is shaking in their boots over whether or not Joe Biden's going to do anything. The other thing is I'm concerned about is if Biden does do something, that he's going to put young men and women in harm's way, and there's not going to be any backing for him.
No, there isn't.
I think that if I were in the military, and if I were a commander, I would have to think long and hard about how I would operate, based on the fact knowing that my own government likely would not come to my aid. That would be a concern.
Well, that's the truth, actually. I mean, you can't depend on those people. I mean, how many the Vietnamese couldn't depend on us? I mean, it's we have no credibility in the world, and this tough talk from Joe Biden is. And let me let me remind you of what Biden has said. Now, this is a major threat. The Taliban must immediately release Mark before it can expect any consideration of its aspirations for legitimacy. Biden is threatening to withhold legitimacy for the Taliban. God, a bunch of killers. My head explodes, Sam. It does.
But does he think that we've all been living in a phone booth?
I guess so. Oh, I'm warning you
that we didn't see what went on with the evacuation out of Afghanistan. That we must not have been paying attention to that.
The Taliban were.
Or he thinks that we're all so dumb that it doesn't matter.
Bingo.
Now, that may be.
You hit it on the head. All those government types, especially if they're liberals, think we're stupid. I mean, the Republicans do to a large extent, but especially academics who've never really had a job in their life, except in the public sector, they're the worst. I mean, they sit in their office. Oh, look at those people. They're like ants down there. You know, it's just it's utterly absurd. They exist because of people like you and me, Sam. They do. Without guys like you and I, they wouldn't exist. Somebody would drag them out of their nice little office and drag them out of their nice little house in the suburbs and say, "You're worthless. We don't want you around here anymore."
Well, I think, I work with them, and it is difficult sometimes to relate to someone who has spent 20 or 30 years in the ivory halls,
mm-hmm.
and you just sit there when you have had dirt under your fingernails and you've scraped your elbows and scraped your knees working, and you know what that is to do hard work. And this is what I used to tell my colleagues. I said, I've had a lot of hard jobs, and being a college professor isn't one of them. and they didn't really appreciate that very much.
The job I had before this was I was a truck driver for a construction company, a semi-truck driver for a construction company, and we laid blacktop all over the state of Iowa. Now, I made twice as much money doing that as I'm making here, by the way.
Right.
But I have air conditioning here, Sam. I'm warm in the winter. I don't have to lift a lot of weight. I don't have to balance my truck on the edge of a cliff, wondering if I'm going to go over it and all those things.
Right.
So this is preferable to that. But I would use for an example of my Bill and Hillary Clinton. And I said that most of these people never had a real job. Bill and Hillary Clinton never had a job. I mean, Bill Clinton taught at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville. Public sector, by the way.
Right.
So,
right.
And Hillary Clinton had the same thing.
Well, she started out on the Watergate
committee, yeah.
Watergate committee, and then never really did anything else. And so
she never wanted to. They both were political people, all the way. They didn't want to get a job. A job would be so unfulfilling. They wanted to be where the power was. That's what they think.
Well, I think both of them went to law school, and there's a reason they went to law school.
They were good students.
Yeah, and students, and then lawyers. And as much as you'd like to think about the law profession being one where I still think there are a lot of lawyers that never gotten their fingernails dirty either. So, but I will say this. My opinion of lawyers has changed dramatically in the last year or so. And I'm very grateful for the ones that I have. So it's because they're very good men, and they do a good job, and that's all I can ask.
That's all you can ask for is right. Sam Clovis has been our guest. Thank you, Sam, as always, for giving us your slant on the world, because it's always accurate. Thank you very much, Sam.
Thanks, Mike. We'll talk to you again next week.
All right. This is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge.
Researchers in Arkansas have developed 3 rice varieties with rich flavor, high-quality grain appearance, nutritional benefits, and more. I'm Amy Simpson with Healthy Living on Brownfield. Anna McClung with the ARS Dale Bumpers National Rice Research Center says most people consume white milled rice, primarily long grain. She says typically rice has a bland flavor and is primarily consumed as a starch. But the 3 rice varieties were developed for specialty markets because of their unique culinary characteristics.
2 of the varieties are what we call aromatics, and that means that they have a natural compound in the plant that produces a kind of a popcorn buttery smell and flavor when it's consumed. 2 of the varieties have pigmented brand. One has a purple or black brand, and the other has a red brand.
Dr. Ming Chen says the rice varieties have nutritional benefits.
The purple rice has a compound called anthocyanin. These compounds are also found in grapes, blueberries. A lot of the health benefits of these anthocyanin are done using the extract from these anthocyanin-containing fruits and vegetables, and also from rice bran.
I'm Amy Simpson with Healthy Living on Brownfield.
Win the war against weeds in your soybean fields with fierce herbicides from Valent USA. With 3 different formulations and multiple modes of action, you're sure to find the right fierce product to protect your operation from tough weeds like Palmer amaranth and water hemp. Give your soybeans a strong, clean start with up to 8 weeks of residual control with the powerful pre-emergence protection of fierce herbicide. Ask your local retailer or visit valent.com/fierce to find the right fierce formulation for you. Always read and follow label instructions.
To buy your home, you became a house hunting ace, learned about loans, scoured neighborhoods, and asked the right questions. Now you're queen of your castle. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll feel empowered to own your retirement like you own your home. Go to aceyourretirement.org, because when it comes to clearing financial hurdles, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Listen to this station anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Odyssey. That's AUDACY.
Hi, this is Gary Rima, the voice of the University of Northern Iowa Panthers, and this is the home for Panther Sports, the voice of Fort Dodge, KVFD.
We're ready, no matter what happens. I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News. That message from President Biden as Russia continues its troop buildup around Ukraine. But he's also emphasizing the ongoing push to avoid conflict in Eastern Europe.
We continue to engage in nonstop diplomacy and to de-escalate tensions and attempt to improve security for our allies and partners and for all of Europe.
The president spoke as he met with the emir of Qatar at the White House, focusing in part on global energy supplies. Europe needs backup plans in case its gas supplies are hit by a possible Russian invasion of Ukraine. Despite its massive troop buildup near the border, Russia accuses the West of provoking tensions and calls a Security Council meeting on the issue today a PR stunt. President Biden also meeting earlier with the nation's governors and encouraging the use of COVID relief funds, not only to keep schools open, but also to help fight violent crime. Meantime, White House spokeswoman Jen Psaki takes issue with characterizing the president as soft on crime.
The president has been a longtime advocate of addressing crime. He's never been defunding the police. Our Department of Justice has increased funding has put in place support for strike forces. And the other fact that is never talked about in these Fox packages, maybe even this one, is the fact that gun crime is a major driver of crime across the country.
The president facing calls from some critics to take a tougher stance on crime as some progressive prosecutors dismiss concern that bail reform may be contributing to a spike in violent crime. A plea deal that would have avoided a hate crimes trial in the killing of Black jogger Ahmaud Arbery is rejected by a federal judge in Georgia. Arbery's parents had denounced the proposed deal, describing the Justice Department's decision to propose it as disrespectful. 3 men were convicted on state charges in Arbery's death and sentenced to life in prison. America is listening to Fox News.
In 2022, Blinds.com is all about celebrating you. Get up to 40% off site-wide going on right now. Custom window treatments are a minor home improvement with a major impact. Blinds.com makes it easy. And right now, it's more affordable than ever. Shop huge discounts on premium blinds, shades, shutters, and more. All backed by our 100% satisfaction guarantee. Shop Blinds.com now and save up to 40% site-wide. That's Blinds.com for up to 40% off site-wide. Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Why does Walgreens offer copays as low as $0 and 90-day refills? Because we care about Medicare, so you don't have to. I mean, do you really care to hear me go on about same-day prescription delivery making your life easier? Or how there's a pharmacy expert available 24/7 and one-click refills? Well, I just did anyways. Fill your Medicare prescriptions with Walgreens and save.
$0 copays apply to Tier 1 generic drugs and select plans with Walgreens as a preferred pharmacy. Restrictions apply. See walgreens.com/Medicare for complete details.
California is moving all death row inmates off of death row.
California's governor put a moratorium on executions 3 years ago, at the time saying death row was wasting billions of dollars and did not serve as a deterrent. Now, the Corrections Department says after a pilot program in which more than 100 of nearly 700 death row inmates were moved to maximum security facilities, they will continue to move the others. The goal for the unused space at San Quentin Prison is to turn it into a positive healing space for rehab and education, according to the governor's budget. The last time someone was executed in the state was 2006, after which a judge ruled the state's lethal injection protocol was unconstitutional. A new protocol was under review, but Newsom's moratorium ended that effort. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
Tomorrow is deadline day in New Orleans, set to become the nation's first major school district to mandate COVID-19 vaccines for children ages 5 and up, although state regulations do allow parents to opt out easily. But as of tomorrow, they have to have a vaccine or a waiver. The most popular cities to move to in the U.S. have some of the worst inflation.
Some people moving to other cities hoping to save money could be in for an unpleasant surprise, according to a new report out. Inflation's on the rise across the country, but according to real estate firm Redfin, it was even worse for housing markets, attracting the most transplants from other parts. Nationally, consumer prices rose about 7% in December year over year. They were up almost 9% in Atlanta, the highest in the country, 8.4% for Phoenix, Tampa, Florida at 8%, all of them top 10 destinations for Redfin.com users moving to a new city. The report also finding the influx of people is one of the causes of rising prices.
Fox's Lillian Wu. A good end to the worst month on Wall Street in nearly 2 years. The Dow up 406 points. The S&P and the NASDAQ also rallying. Lisa Brady. This is Fox News.
Your news, your town, your station. KVFD News when it breaks.
For KVFD News, I'm Brooke Bickford. A legislator who's worked to pass state laws to crack down on the sexual exploitation of students by school employees is proposing more protections. Educators are mandatory reporters that are to let law enforcement know when they suspect an adult in a school is abusing a student. But Representative Megan Jones of Sioux Rapids says if a student is over the age of 12, reporting of such cases is discretionary.
And that's just mind-boggling, I think, to a lot of people, because if this student has experienced sexual abuse, sexual exploitation in a school district, one would only assume that their age is irrelevant, right? This is inappropriate behavior.
Jones says that state law should require educators to report suspected sexual exploitation of students of any age, including all the students in high school. Jones says 2 House committees have been working on legislation to address the issue. An effort to control the feral cat population in Fort Dodge is getting a boost with a Valentine-based fundraiser. Cookies for Kitties is a fundraiser developed by new Webster County Animal Protection Officer Kayla Blomberg. Blomberg started her job January 19th and says she has found that the feral cat population is a major concern to people. It's an issue that exploded during COVID shutdowns.
COVID did not do any of us any service, but especially not the feral cats. A lot of vets were not doing elective surgeries. I don't think trap and release was really happening. And there's not been a ton of fundraising done for feline youth intervention.
She says she contacted friends in the business world to help get the fundraiser off the ground, and it just fell into place.
With what we've currently raised for funds so far, we can help anywhere from 12 to 16 cats.
To order cookies, you can find Webster County Animal Protection on Facebook. This weekend, members of the Fort Dodge Senior High School speech team will compete in the state speech contest after a great showing at districts. The 12 groups who qualified at district will compete Saturday in Spencer. Also representing the Dodgers on Saturday will be the FDSH Team 7332 Dodger Bots. They will compete at the First Tech Challenge Robotics Western Iowa Super Qualifier. And about 100 Fort Dodge Senior High students will be honored tonight for academic excellence during the annual Academic Letter Awards presentation. The presentation recognizes students who maintain a 3.5 grade point average or higher for 3 consecutive terms. We at Alpha Media would like to congratulate all of the students in our community. From the Jerry Sheeter Newsroom, I'm Brooke Bickford.
Here's the AM 1400 KVFE weatherology forecast. A mix of clouds and sun this afternoon with daytime highs approaching 40. Winds out of the southeast 10 to 15 miles per hour. Lows dip down to about 27. Tonight, partly cloudy skies. Partly cloudy tomorrow, 31. Temperatures well below average Wednesday and Thursday with highs in the single digits above zero. From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. Currently, it's 33.
Meaningful memorialization starts when loved ones talk about what matters most.
Grandpa, this card asks, what was your favorite vacation?
Well, we didn't go on vacation when I was a kid, but our family did go fishing when we could. My dad could always find the best fishing holes, and he taught me how to clean the fish, too.
You mean you ate the fish you caught?
You bet.
Sharing stories and memories with those who matter most isn't just important today, it will be especially significant when it's time to honor a life lived. Contact Gunderson Funeral Home to learn more about having the talk of a lifetime.
Dutch Boy Platinum Plus. It's only paint. It's only paint that comes in an award-winning twist and pour container. It's only paint that will transform your den with just one coat of salted lavender into a writer's sanctuary. It's only paint that will help you become TV's hottest writer, where you'll meet this guy
Hey,
who starred in that thing.
now that's a twist I didn't see coming.
So yeah, it's only paint. Only easy opening, smooth pouring, change your life both professionally and romantically paint. Dutch Boy. Only at Menards.
Blue Ribbon, Pelham Waters, your water pro since 1949.
Do you have questions about your water? What is a whole home filter? Is my softener working or not? Can I get rid of that red stain around the sink? I'm Brian with Blue Ribbon Pelham Waters. We're here to fix problem water. We'll work with you to find the right solution for you. We've been serving the Fort Dodge area since 1949. Let us serve your water treatment needs. Sales, service, rentals. Blue Ribbon Pelham Waters, your complete water store.
This is AM 1400, KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. It's 410. Joe Coleman will join us in just a few minutes. We'll talk about the 7 deadly sins and the 7 cardinal virtues. Find any other radio station in the state and see if they're discussing these things with a sense of humor. You won't find it. This is the best talk show station in the state of Iowa. Because I listened to that other big boomer down there in Des Moines all day. I was driving today. Tiresome. This program brought to you by Blue Ribbon Pelham Waters at 612 South 32nd Street, Fort Dodge. You may contact Blue Ribbon Pelham Waters by calling 576-6481 or online at www.fdwater.com. Yeah, Joe Coleman coming up.
Susan, it's so great to finally be able to get together again.
Oh, it sure is. And I really appreciate you picking up the bill.
I'm happy to. I've got the extra cash. Since we've all been driving so much more again, I've been using Get Upside, the free gas app that pays you cash back for every gallon of gas you buy.
Wait a minute. Are you saying you actually get paid cash when you buy gas with the Get Upside app?
Yes, I get real cash back every time I buy gas.
Does that actually add up to anything?
I'll make $200 to $300 this year.
Wow, that's serious extra cash. I'm downloading the free Get Upside app now.
Download the free Get Upside app now to earn cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code GEAR for 25 cents a gallon or more cash back on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank, to PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code GEAR. Earn 25 cents a gallon or more on your first tank. That's code GEAR.
Michael Devine, the Doctor of Truth.
Does anyone have anything they'd like to confess?
That AM 1400 KVFD.
That's right. I'm Michael Devine, the Doctor of Truth, and it's my great pleasure to welcome to the program once again the Pope of Webster County. And that, of course, would be Joe Coleman, my friend, who I've never really met in person, but I look forward to the day. Joe, how are you?
I am very well, Michael. How are you?
I'm pretty good. You know, you'll get a kick out of this. Joe and I wanted to discuss the 7 deadly sins and the 7 cardinal virtues today. Now, that could be a several-hour lecture, I know, but we're going to have to try to condense it into about 43 minutes of airtime. But in preparation, I was sitting at home with my tablet this morning looking for different takes on the 7 deadly sins and the 7 cardinal virtues. And I found myself looking at the 7 deadly sins in game form. In other words, there are video games out there on the 7 deadly sins for kids. Little kids can play video games about the 7 deadly sins. Now, I hope this is church approved, but I have a feeling that it isn't.
Oh, my goodness.
That's it. Anyway, Joe Coleman, of course, has a very recognizable name. He is an attorney. He's a Catholic and a deacon in the Catholic Church. And boy, does he know his church history. You really do, Joe. So.
Too much.
Am I flattering you too much?
You're making me nervous.
No. No. You have. I don't know. Gosh, I can't remember what we talked about last Monday now, but I remember you dazzled me with your insight into a couple of things.
We were talking about Christ's first public miracle.
Thank you.
Cana.
Thank you very much. That is right, and that was a great discussion, really. Let's start with the 7 virtues. The 7 virtues have been mentioned. Well,
Mike, I love it. You really want to talk? Everybody's interested in sin, Michael.
Oh, I was saving sin for the big finale. I thought we'd do the virtues as a warm-up act to my favorite topic, sin.
Well, yeah, you're true, but you know, in what the writers and the commentators tell us, and tradition tells us, we probably start with the very first thing that enters the world is disorder, and the disorder that enters the world first and foremost doesn't come through. We have what we might refer to as a spiritual disorder or order of the spirits. And then we have a human disorder, which happens with Adam and Eve in original sin.
Sure.
But the first sin, the father of all sins, is pride. And that's why when every cradle Catholic, when you ask them, can you recite the 7 deadly sins, they always get pride right. They usually get 2 right, pride and lust.
Oh, yeah.
For some reason.
Yeah.
You know.
I've studied lust.
And most people, not most people, but a lot of people think the way that St. Augustine thought, well, because he was quite a rounder before he really got conversion and got the faith. And one of his prayers allegedly was, Christ, Lord, make me chaste, but not yet. And the idea there being that because of our fallen nature, we all are drawn to sin. We are. And as we talk about the 7 deadly sins, most people think, well, where is pride come from? Pride is rooted in every single sin that we do. Pride is the first sin, and pride is the sin of Lucifer, the sin of Satan. And from time immemorial, or if you will, outside of time, in the eternal now, when the Lord created the angels, the most sentient, intelligent being that tradition tells us that the Lord ever created was Satan. And he was, as the saying goes, he had more knowledge in his little fingernail, if you will, if we can humanize him in that sense, than a million Einsteins would ever have.
Mm-hmm.
And so the bottom line is that Satan, one of the reasons why Satan dislikes human beings so much is because it was quote unquote human nature which really caused Satan to fall like a shooting star from heaven into hell. And it came about that Satan was confronted with what the second person of the Blessed Trinity was going to do. That Christ, the second person, was going to become man, was going to take on a dual nature of both God and man. And the upshot was Satan was going to be required, as we all are, to worship Christ. And Satan said, I will not. He's a human being. I will not worship these lesser beings, because on the scale of creation, angels are way ahead of us on the creation plus side. And he said, I won't do it. And ergo pride, what drove him to say, I will not obey, I will not worship, I will not honor, was the sin of pride. And that's why it's called, if you will, the granddaddy of all sins. And all sins find themselves to some degree rooted in pride.
Let me this is the first time I've said this with such literal meaning. Let me play devil's advocate with you just for a moment. Satan, or the devil, or Lucifer, or whoever you want to call him, has a point. He would not worship Jesus because Jesus is a human. Should we worship Jesus if he is human?
Because Jesus is both in his persona. He is both human and divine. The short answer is yes, because Jesus is and was God. And ultimately, when you really get into this stuff, I don't know. My guess is that you probably were maybe delved in Teilhard de Chardin.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. He was a Jesuit. He was the one that discovered Peking man. He was an anthropologist, or at least he was with the group that discovered Peking man. And Chardin believed that we were in a process of evolution, that we were moving from the alpha to the omega. And those were the words he chose. And that Christ was the embodiment of both the alpha and the omega, that Christ is everything. And that I'm going to, excuse me, Mike, I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest version here. All of creation is working to get back to the Creator. All forms, this was his philosophy. All forms, animate and inanimate. And that as the evolutionary scale progressed, even matter would move in echelons to life, to understanding, to union with the Creator. And he posited that was best shown in the life of Christ, that Christ was both God and man, and he was showing us that when man ultimately is joined with God, man's destiny is to be godlike. And, he had a lot of trouble in the beginning. His works were suppressed. And when we look at the New Testament, our destiny our destiny is to become one with God. So one might say that we become God-like. But boy, does that border on pride?
Yes.
You know?
Yes, it does.
Absolutely. But it's marvelous. This plan that the Creator, that the Trinity has set out for us is absolutely marvelous. God the Father putting the whole thing in movement by saying, you know, here it is, let it be, and it was immediately. The Big Bang, if you will, that physicists talk about. Christ comes to show us how we are to live in this system that the Lord created, but also to save us, to redeem us from our own nefarious ways. And then Christ says, I will send the Spirit, or the Spirit will come to enlighten you, because quite frankly, everything that Christ had to tell us and to show us, we weren't ready for. The Spirit has been working for 2,000 years trying to enlighten us and to move us forward in our journey of union with God. And you know, the whole story, Mike, is just it almost defies understanding, and it is so marvelous and so replete with degrees of nuance that, you know, we can spend 1,000 years peeling back the layers and just be scratching the surface.
I'm going to try to digest all that here. Joe.
So anyway,
So,
as we were saying, the first sin is pride.
Yes.
You know, and then we work our way down into those things, you know, love of money and envy and wrath or hate and lust and gluttony and sloth. But these things, when we look at those things, and you and I have talked about this repeatedly, each one of those sins talks about a disorder. I think I could get you to agree with me on that.
I think so. I'm going to ask you about love of money here in a minute, but please continue.
So, you know, it's always about the Creator, the what should I say? The idea of the Creator, or the tell on the Creator, is that the Creator is ordered all the time. And we are able to perceive that in a very rudimentary way as human beings. And every time there is a disorder, disorders are indicators of something which is opposed to or on the shadow side with the Creator being light. So, you know, when we go down through this and we look at things, you know, I was thinking about this when you told me you wanted to talk about both the virtues and the sins. And by the way, you couldn't begin, I don't believe that you could have virtues, if you will, without sin, because you have to have a point counterpoint. I'm guessing that Adam and Eve, with infused knowledge, weren't even thinking about virtues. They were just acting that way. It's kind of like the way that you and I will be, Mike, when we get to heaven. We will be incapable of committing sin. Our existence will be such that it is perfect, and we have no need for virtues because we always act in an orderly fashion, a fashionable way, you know. But you look at these things and you see, like with gluttony, everybody thinks about food with gluttony. That's just the tip of the iceberg. You can be gluttonous if you were talking about games earlier,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yes.
You can engage in the sin of gluttony, being all immersed in gaming. so that that's your end all and be all, and all you do is gaming. That's a disorder. And, you know, not only would our medicine men today tell us it's a disorder and warn parents about it, and the Chinese government has even taken steps to eliminate or to limit the amount of time that gaming can go on in Red China. There's a disorder there. There's a gluttony there. You can have gluttony with drink. It just isn't food. You can have gluttony when you want something and you immerse yourself in something so much that it becomes a disorder. That's gluttony.
Well, according to all the police and detective TV shows I've watched over the years, people are motivated by two things: sex and money. So explain the love of money, because we live in a capitalist society. And winning the game, to some, is getting the most toys, accumulating the most wealth. Those with a lot of wealth have status in our society, in our Christian society. Is this sort of thing a love of money, or could you explain that a little bit more?
Well, Mike, once again, I'm not so sure that is an investiture in pride, and to a great extent.
That could be, of course, if you pursue money like that, you do it for all the reasons that I mentioned just a few minutes ago, to achieve status.
If you have $100 billion, why are you wanting to acquire more?
Because it's there.
Because it's there. You know what it really is? Because somebody else has something you don't have. That's really when you strip it away and you give it an acid bath and then you put it under a bright light. My hallucination is that a lot of this motivation is to acquire from others things that you don't have. And that's really if they would take time to analyze it, seems to me to be the driving force which motivates. A really pride and an envy. How can a man or a group of people, let's say 100 people, who have more wealth, let's expand that, 1,000 people in the world who have more wealth than the next 5 billion. How is it that they want to have, quote unquote, more? Well, I'm thinking that maybe it's rooted in a variety of things: pride, gluttony, envy, avarice, the love of money.